Well, good afternoon to members of the press. Thank you again for joining us. We've just come out of a very successful meeting with NEMAC, national stakeholders for the COVID-19 response management. The meeting included members of the private sector from the Chamber of Commerce, from the SLHTA, from the Manufacturers Association, from the Small Business Association. We also had representation from the civil society, from the religious community. We also had participation from the opposition, the main opposition, St. Lucia Labour Party. So present at the meeting were the opposition leader, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, and also former Senator Joachim Henry. And we had a very, very good meeting. The meeting was really called to review the protocols which we put in place some 2 weeks ago. And as we contemplate on the situation presently, we see that those protocols are not working. Instead of the cases going downwards, we see the increase in the number of cases continue. We are very concerned, obviously, about this development. And so we felt it necessary to bring together various stakeholders so that we can develop a new set of protocols. With me at the head table, I've got the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Alan Chasney. I've got the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar George, also the Deputy Police Commissioner in Mr. Milton Daisy. I'll hand over now to the Chief Medical Officer. We'll have some opening remarks from her. Then we'll go to Mr. Milton Daisy, and then the Prime Minister will be reading out the list of recommendations or instructions, if you will, the new regime for COVID-19. We're going to have some new protocols which will come into effect on Monday. That will be announced by the Prime Minister. But for now, we're asking our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar George, to address you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good afternoon to all. As of today, Friday, November 13th, we note a total of 156 cases of COVID-19. We've registered 2 deaths, and we have 1 patient in critical condition at the respiratory hospital. We have a total of 110 active cases. Over the last 14 days, we've noted a total of 56 new cases of COVID-19, and our classification has been upgraded to clusters of cases. We also note through our contact tracing process over the last 2 weeks that the R0, that is the reproductive rate that we note for transmission for COVID-19, has also increased as compared to our first wave. As we manage this second wave, our contact tracing team, they've noted the increases in transmission in our positive cases. What do they note? The level of risk from our positive cases, indicating the lack of compliance to the various protocols and policies that have been put in place to date. So that given we know the lack of compliance, it puts us at this stage in a very critical position where if we don't work to break the chain of transmission with immediate effect, it would lead to our forecasting and our projections over the next 14 days to almost tripling the numbers that we are noting to date. So with that, the recommendations that have been made are done in a very targeted way, looking at where the levels of risk exist to try to curb and reduce and to break transmission at this point. Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Milton Daisy, at this time.
Yes, good afternoon. As it stands, today we realize that the protocols that had been established, especially that was 2 weeks ago, persons were not fully complying. I must say that at this point we realized that the wearing of masks, there was a vast improvement in the city where persons were wearing their mask, I must admit. However, there were certain protocols not being followed, for example, at the various bars and places of public entertainment. We saw that the persons were supposed to have bought their drinks and leave the bar, but that was not happening. So hence the need for some of the changes that I think PM would be mentioning. Also, we saw the continuation of persons coming in through illegal means. And that, so much so that last week we took in at least four individuals who had been entering, who had entered the island through the back door, as we say. Also, we are still getting complaints on the buses where persons not complying with especially the drivers, the total number of persons that they need to carry. We are getting the complaints. We are getting videos of persons who I must, at this point, thank the members of the public who see it fitting to report these incidents. And that is what I'm urging persons when you have realized that somebody is not adhering to the protocols, that you need to inform the police of that. We also saw persons who were entering, persons who they knew entered through the back door. I must also thank the public for giving us certain information about persons whom they realized had been entering illegally. And in general, I must thank the police officers who, on the front line, who are doing so much in terms of getting things in order to ensure that persons comply, and the enforcement and the officers who go out there to take in those persons into quarantine. So hence the reason that for those who are not, we believe that as CMO have indicated, the numbers as increasing and not going down. So hence the reason why stricter measures have been put in place. So this is for me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daisy. Before I go through each of the individual protocols, just allow me to characterize the current situation. The CMO has indicated that we're trending in the wrong direction, that the R rate, if we don't address it, that we could find ourselves with substantial more cases at hand. What's the implications? While we've always focused on the number of beds we have in the ICU unit as being our limitation, and we know that on average 5% of the persons who become infected, that those persons could end up being critically ill and then requiring to be in an IC unit. We have another problem in that the number of people who are either in isolation because we have them as being high risk, and those persons who now have been tested positive. The number of beds that we're going to require, or space we're going to require, is quickly exceeding our amount. And we may be in a position very soon to have persons who have tested positive to remain at their home. This is not something that we would want to rely upon, because we think it's important to the health of our nation, the safety of our nation, that those persons who are tested positive preferably should be in administrated isolation. We've already seen that the numbers that we have on island have caused us to be removed and placed into a higher risk destination. And this certainly will have implications for us, both for solutions traveling within the region, as well as tourists coming to our destination. And more importantly now, the health of our own citizens. Because we certainly don't want to be in the position where we cannot help. And that persons are being unnecessarily exposed. So the last 2 weeks, we've attempted to put protocols in place to address the R rate and the initial exposure that has been created by persons in our community who were infected. And sadly, because they did not come or were affected by, we believe, somebody who came in illegally, we didn't get a quick heads up, and they were not in quarantine. And therefore, they have infected several other people. Because we as a nation are not practicing the protocols that we should, that we've seen the virus spread much faster. If in fact we had been adhering, all of us had been adhering to the protocols, while we would have had some spread, we do not believe it would have been to the magnitude that we've seen today. We attempted 2 weeks ago to put in protocols to reduce the amount of social activities that people were participating in. Sadly, that message does not seem to have sunk in, and we're continuing to see persons have parties at their homes, parties on beaches, and gathering around bars. And certainly the numbers that we would have liked to have seen at things like funerals and weddings, that those also have been abused. So we met today with an attempt to strengthen those protocols. So the first one is that work from home where possible. Again, our intention is to work with the private sector and also the public sector to cause those persons who do not need to go to work and that they can work from home, that they do so. And we're imploring the cooperation of all businesses to review their current operation practices and, where possible, cause people to stay home. 2, to reduce crowd events in total. Sorry, before I get there, that business operating hours will remain at 9 o'clock at night, with the exception of bars, and all bars will be closed from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Those bars / grocery stores in the communities can continue to offer liquor on a grab-and-go basis. But all places that only are bars will be asked to cease operations at 4 o'clock, and up until 4 o'clock, they're only allowed to practice grab-and-go. Persons are not to purchase liquor at these premises and consume them on the premises, or to have any form of social gathering on those premises. We're going to restrict all gatherings. So in essence, we are asking for there to be a suspension of all social gatherings. We're reducing church services back to 25 people. The funerals afterwards would be limited to 25 people. We're asking for the suspension of all weddings, ceremonies, asking for the suspension of all social activities, including sports. Anything that would cause persons to come together, we're asking that to be suspended. So even in terms of your own home, to stop from inviting your own family members for the next 2 weeks over to your home. So we would like to see a complete suspension of any form of social gatherings. that, again, as I reiterated, the restrictions on alcohol sales will be restricted to only grab and go. And as indicated, the prohibition of all sporting activities. These steps are absolutely necessary to ensure the health and safety of our country. We have reached a tipping point. We can change our projection and maintain, for the most part, the economy and the health of our society. But we have to be disciplined. Persons must wear their face mask, must continue to practice social distancing and all forms of hand sanitization and body hygiene. These are empirical to the success. We don't have a vaccine, so we're not going to succeed. This is the only thing that we can do. Failing which, that we will have to strengthen those protocols even further. So we will review the outcome of these new protocols within the next week. So depending on the report from the CMO and her team, we will then know which way to go. It is sad that despite the increase in number of cases and the announcement of 2 deaths, that as recent as yesterday, the police arrested somebody suspected of coming in through the back door. It's sad that some persons would put their life at risk to go to Martinique. Sadly, the boat encountered problems and 2 fishermen lost their lives. It's sad that persons continue to go to bars and hang out outside. It's sad that persons were continuing to have beach parties. We need to take this thing seriously, St. Lucia and St. Lucians. We're the only ones who are going to suffer if we fail to rise to this challenge. And these protocols are to be guidelines for you, and by strengthening those guidelines to help the enforcement officers to implement these guidelines. And we've asked the police. We're also going to engage local government. We're looking to hire additional wardens to help with the enforcement. But the most important enforcement is you. Protect yourself, protect your family, protect our country. This is what we need to do. And so I'm really hoping that all of you will adhere to these new protocols and that we can see a turnaround in our R rate within the next week or so, so that we can get on amends. But we are heading in the wrong direction at this point, and many persons and families' lives are being put at risk unnecessarily. I want to say that in putting these protocols together, that we've attempted to keep our economy going. And we have reviewed the businesses and the operations that have been adhering to the rules. So in the commercial sector, the manufacturers, the call centers, tourism industry, the services that require 24/7 operations, the CMO and their team are so far very satisfied with those operations. We have made recommendations of things that they can do to tighten up their protocols. In terms of retail business, we're very satisfied so far with the grocery stores and the gas stations and many of the other businesses that are operating, that they have maintained the necessary protocols. The element here that we have identified is social activities. And this is the part which we're really saying to us as a society, we must temper significantly for the next 2 to 3 weeks in order to reduce the R rate. And if we don't reduce the R rate, we're going to expose both yourself and your family members and your neighbors unnecessarily. So again, I thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to answering any of the questions you may have.
So the floor is now open for questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. We want to thank also the Chief Medical Officer and the Police, Deputy Police Commissioner, Mr. Milton Daisy, for his contribution here as well. So over to you, members of the press. Please raise your hands if you have any questions. Shafil Gillard from The Loop is the only in-house journalist. Well, this is only for 2 weeks, and the ARC is usually in December. What date is today? They start from the 14th, I believe, is Monday. So I think the ARC should be outside of that, actually.
Okay, these services will continue. The measures that we've put in place are targeted at the areas that we see as high risk, and also the areas that through contact tracing we note a high level of transmission. So those have been functioning well, so we are not going to make changes at this point to the service delivery there.
When the last set of protocols were established, the grammar there were still cases where people, were in violation of these protocols. How can we, the public, be ensured that these protocols will be enforced?
I think that's for Commissioner.
Yes. Actually, this is what we saw was lacking, the compliance with the grab and go, especially at the bars. This is why we are trying to lessen on the number of persons who assemble, and it's the reason why the time for the bars to open would be 4 p.m. It was recommended that it would be at 4. So we believe that from work, the intention is that persons who leave work would be going to their homes. So there would be no need for the bar to remain open from 4 p.m. And it would give us an opportunity, the police, to police these activities even better, because you have the time, you do not have the night time to police. So we believe that at 4, it is a reasonable time that we, law enforcement, would be able to make the difference.
And I know the PM said.
All right, so we have one question by Zoom. Just we'll come back to you, Mr. Gaylord. But we have Nelsia Shalmain from Choice TV. Go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of monitoring and ensuring compliance on the RSLPF side, how exactly are we to be confident that this can happen? Because I have seen in the past few weeks businesses, establishments open past 9 p.m. and not even bars, just like restaurants and things of the sort. How are we going to ensure compliance in the next 2 weeks?
Yes, as it has been said, we are working two parts. The persons having to take personal responsibility, ensure that they do what the protocols say and don't do what you ought not to do. And number 2, we will be out there. The police would be out there, and it is a gradual process. If you realize from the first time we said, okay, persons be responsible, wear your mask and so on, but last time give persons an opportunity to be opened, let the economic activities go on, but persons, we were concerned about persons gathering together. So that we should be able to be in a position to ensure that these protocols are maintained. And as the PM said, we are looking at increasing the number of persons that would be assisting us in doing that. So I think I would allow the PM to say it, but there's a particular number of individuals that we are looking forward to assist the police in policing these community bars.
Thank you. We're looking to recruit approximately 200 new people that'll be working with the police and also the village councils and city councils. But we know that enforcement is a critical component to this. We are working with the business communities who are also looking to make resources available, i.e. Specifically with the bars, to help in the enforcement of these protocols.
Is there a timeline in getting
We're working on to get them in by next week.
Okay, I see Ms. Shalmine hand is up. Is it up again, or was it up from the last time?
It's again.
Okay. So we take another question from you.
In terms of, yeah, the bars closing at 4, we all understand why, but what consideration has been given to the economic impact on those bar owners as well as their employees?
Well, significant amount of interest and sympathy, really, and appreciation for what's happening. We had representation from that sector in the meeting, and what we did indicate is what we're trying to do here is to reduce the level of socialization, because from the science, what we're seeing, clearly it is showing that it is as a result of the assembly of individuals for social gatherings, continues to be the number one generator of the spread that we're currently in. So we had a very frank and open discussion with that sector a short time ago, and I think that we had arrived at the consensus that this is the best thing for us to do. But we understand that that sector, they have been in significant difficulty, not just now, but over several months because of a lack of business, where we would have completely shut off their tourism business. But, you know, these are the tough calls that we have to make in order for us to be successful in the management of our COVID response. Is it Sheffield, or I see Nelsia hand is up again?
So one more question.
Okay, Nelsia.
Can I get some clarification as to whether gyms are allowed to operate?
CMO?
No.
No is the answer, but I don't know if the CMO would like to expound on why.
With our contact tracing that we've done so far, we looked at the high-risk areas and the areas where we noted increased transmission. So sporting activities will also be stopped. They'll be restricted to family activities like walking. So whatever activities that will be allowed will be immediate family only, and not for larger groups. Also, the gyms will also be suspended within the 2-week period.
Okay, I see Solange Alfred from HTS. Would you like to ask a question? I think there's a question in the chat which I'm not able to see. Would you like to unmute your mic and ask it?
My mic has a problem. The question is, the government...
How are we looking to enforce the work from home?
Yeah. The government had requested a work from home regime. How is it looking to enforce it?
So we cannot enforce work from home, but these are one of the strong recommendations that we're making, and that's why NEMAC is such an important institution, because the civil society as well as the business community are part of that. And so it is a common effort, both on the government's part to make sure we're adhering to that rule, as well as businesses doing everything we possibly can to cause people to work from home.
All right, I know that the Prime Minister's time is running out. He's got some other commitments. So does anyone want to ask him specifically any questions before he departs? Nelsia, is that a yes in the affirmative that you would have a few more questions to the Prime Minister? I notice your hand is up.
The team will remain here.
I'm sorry, it was accidental.
Oh, okay. All right, so I see no further questions. Sheffield, are you okay? There's no other. So PM, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the day. Are there any other questions via Zoom? Well, it appears that we have come to the end of the press conference. I want to thank the Prime Minister who has just exited the room. I also want to thank our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar George. I want to thank the Deputy Police Commissioner, Mr. Milton Daisy. I want to thank the Government Information Service and all of their individuals. I just want to recap the decisions that we have made here today. They include a range of issues which we have discussed with the NEMAC team. We're looking to curb the spread of the virus as much as possible through discouraging individuals from converging in large gatherings publicly. And so some of the measures that we are implementing since our last meeting would include working from home where possible, and this is a strong advisory rather than a law. And we've had significant discussion with the business community. Business operating hours remain the same. They close at 9 to allow for the going home of individuals by 10 o'clock. Restrictions on social gatherings was actually another key area that we came up with today as well. And mass crowd gatherings, which will include birthday parties, retirements, weddings, funeral receptions, wakes, boat rides, beach picnics, etc. We're actually prohibiting them at this present time in the new regulations which are going to be coming out. We are also having a daily church and religious services are limited now to 25 individuals within the church compound. So it takes into account both internally and externally of the church. And this is all with a view to help to reduce the numbers. And they looked as well at prohibiting the sporting events was another activity whereby before we had the non-contact sport. We've actually decided that we would have the prohibition of all sports. I think I missed one regulation, and that is the consumption of the alcohol on the premises of the place or the vendor is not allowed. So, for example, standalone bars must close by 4 p.m. The grab-and-go policy stays in effect for bars until 4 p.m. No gathering outside of bars either. Strict measures of enforcement will be taken. Consumption prohibited at bars. So we've made that clear. Gas stations, supermarkets, restaurants, and food vendors can sell alcohol until 9 p.m., which is different from the bars. We are a converging of individuals would be more organic and natural, and the grab-and-go or takeaway service are actually recommended from the gas stations, supermarkets, and restaurants. All food and drinks are required to be served to go. There will be strictly no dining experience for the assigned period, which begins from Monday, 16th November, and it runs for a duration of 14 days. So thank you very much, members of the press. This brings us to the end of the press conference, and we thank you for your participation here today. Thank you.